Here's a PS2 game I checked out not too long ago, The Bouncer. Oh Square, ya squares. We usually associate Square Enix with the Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and the Kingdom Hearts series, but here comes one that didn't carry on a franchise, had no spin-offs or sequels, and I guess sort of hid under the radar much after its release. The Bouncer was the first Square title to be developed for the PS2, and kind of like that with any new console in its first batch of games, this was one of the first marquee titles for the console. Upon release, it was met with middling reviews, and sadly, that's how I feel about the game too. Just kinda meh. The game centers on the three playable characters, Sion, Volt, and Ku, who wear obscene cosplay outfits and call themselves bouncers. They get paid to stand outside bars and look intimidating because, why not? They're also friends with a girl named Dominique, and believe me when I say, they never stop saying her goddamn name.
Dominique!
Dominique! Dominique! Dominique!
Dominique!
Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique!
Dominique, Dominique,
Dominique!
Dominique.
Dominique! 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 Dominique!
Dominique!
Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique! Dominique!
Dominique. Dominique.
Dominique.
Dominique! 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 Dominique!
Dominique!
Dominique. Dominique.
So anyway, the news is out that a group of people known as the Mikado Special Forces have built a solar-powered generator satellite to distribute electricity around the planet. They barge into the bar, abduct Dominique, and make like a leaf and tree as the bouncers go after them to rescue her. So it honestly seems like a rehashed rescue the damsel in distress sort of scenario, but come on, this is Square we're talking about. I'm pretty sure it's illegal for them to write a simple, linear plot. While catching the train to the Mikado building, they run into an old stripper friend of Volt's, reach the building via airship, and find out the Mikado's heir named Duragon is the brother of Dominique, who ends up killing Sion's old master. Then there's Sion's old friend who has the ability to turn into a panther because she's being experimented on and ages 10 biological years, while our heroes are splitting up and fighting their way through PD4 robots, as well as meeting old faces time and time again. Dominique turns out to be an artificial robot created to replicate the image of Duragon's dead sister, who then hooks Dominique up to a computer using her circuitry to fire lasers at Earth to exact revenge on those who didn't help him when he was young, and Jesus, this is quite a lot to cram in.
Good. Good.
I'll start off with the good stuff. This game is said to resemble a playable action movie, and I couldn't agree more. The structure of the plot unfolds in different ways and is made up of so many cinematic cutscenes. It puts just enough attention to the story elements while still giving more immediacy and thrill factor to the pacing of the game. The graphics are very good for a game from 2000, but again, that's pretty much a given with Square. The dubbing, while not exceptionally great, can play in either English or Japanese, depending on what works best for the player, which is a big plus in my book, something that a lot of newer games from Japan need to take note of before releasing to the States. The combat in the game is above average, allowing the player to move around much more than a regular fighting game, while still pulling off some nice moves with high, medium, and low attacks. It's also fun upgrading the characters to obtain more special powers or to improve upon their statistics. It even has a multiplayer function that allows 2 to 4 players to engage in a battle royale, but sadly, there is no co-op option. And I, for one, was really into the game's soundtrack. Some of the tunes sound the same, but the ones that stick out really stick out and have an all-around good beat. A little fun fact is that this was the first PS2 game to use Dolby 5.1 sound, so it has that going for it. But with all of that said, there certainly are plenty of flaws in this game. I'll just get the easy one out of the way. The Bouncer is too short. If I had skipped all the cutscenes, I would have completed this game in well under 2 hours. Now the interesting thing is that this game can be played multiple times in order to see each bouncer side of the story. Part of the problem of adding a feature like this is that I have to be invested in the characters, and while it pains me to have to list so many faults, these characters just aren't very interesting. They felt rather stock and didn't seem to leave any sort of impression. I just don't feel like I really got to know these guys. But okay, one of the villains that you fight a few times, I think his name is Mugetsu, he's a real delight. He just breathes so much life into the game with the psychotic and rapey presence he has. Seriously, why couldn't the game be more about this lunatic?
I can't wait to butcher all of you!
Game developers certainly are becoming more aware of how to strengthen characters now than ever before. Take The Last of Us Left Behind DLC for instance. So many fans had an emotional attachment to Ellie, who proved to be a very well-rounded character in the Naughty Dog game. This add-on might seem like a cash grab to some, but to many others, it was well worth playing, as it helped to further expand on a character's background, someone who we care about, and what she's fighting for. So yeah, I'm not sure if The Bouncer is a game that is really worth playing an additional 2 times, but it's all based on preference. On top of that, I went into the game blindly, so I would regularly switch between each of the characters for each fight, instead of just playing as one the whole time. They label it as a beat-em-up game with RPG elements, so I thought it made sense to use the bouncer points that I earned to boost each of the characters' statistics and unlock new fighting moves. You know, sort of like an RPG. Now the bouncer is also pretty easy, hence why it didn't take as long as I thought it would to beat. This game has a thing for strength in numbers, because for almost every fight, you're never alone. When the other two bouncers are not there to be incompetent, they're always going to be there to back you up. This can be nice sometimes when you're taking on more powerful enemies, but usually you're the one who's dealing the most damage. The fights aren't smooth sailing because your AI companions are so good, it's actually quite the opposite. They go balls a-blazing head first at the nearest threat and prove to be astonishing distractions while you can get the enemy from behind, taking little to no damage, if you're careful. The boss fights definitely get a little harder as the game goes on, but it's nothing that will cause you to rage quit. Did I die numerous times during the game? Yes, but not so much due to the fighting mechanics or the bosses, but mostly because of that fucking camera. The perspective is very unforgivable and hardly focuses on anything. It's bad enough that the bouncers are typically fighting in cramped spaces, but it's not okay when you have no control over the view and take damage from something off screen. A camera like this feels more suited in games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill because it really adds to the experience. Not seeing what's coming complements the creepy factor and makes sense since the characters are located in a disorienting setting. But the bouncer screwed the pooch on that one. The camera angles should be seeing things more clearly from the bouncer's point of view and know what's coming. Plus, as a small nitpick, every time you die, you're given no continues or additional lives. Instead, you get transported back to the main menu and you have to reselect the file that you last saved on, meaning it's vital that you save after every brawl. Interestingly enough, Tetsuya Nomura, who did the character designs for the game, based Sora's look on Sion. I don't see the resemblance. I'd say that while the bouncer contains plenty of things that just don't work or can be straight up agonizing, it has good ideas, it has nice visuals, and was more than willing to try new things that other game developers weren't attempting at the time. It's passable, and I'm glad I played it, but at the same time, nothing too special. Take it for what it's worth, and as always, have a good one.
Dominique. Dominique.